Welcome back, everyone. The JT Show, Super Talk Mississippi. Rhino at the controls, bumping us into this segment with the obligatory rawhide on this TV theme show Thursday on the JT Show, Super Talk Mississippi, live from the Neshoba County Fair. Joining us now, the President, CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, Mr. Douglas Carswell. Thanks so much for coming on.
Gerard, it is wonderful to be on your show, and it is wonderful to be here at the greatest political festival in America.
I think it is, and you being, of course, from across the pond, you would have a more unbiased view of that, of course, so your observations have caused you to come to that conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, if there was the same amount of political common sense in the rest of America that I find here at the Neshoba County Fair, the Republic would be in very good shape.
Well, it ain't hard. It's just get government out of my life. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I've been talking to everybody on the show about that today. Where do we get to this point where we've got at least one party in this country that believes that government is everybody's solution, the solution to every problem, and it's just this cradle-to-grave European-style socialism that frankly has turned the continent to a great extent into one of mediocrity.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why Neshoba has so much common sense is because the politicians here it's grassroots. They're talking directly to ordinary taxpayers.
Yeah.
And that's how politics should be conducted. And if you're accountable to the ordinary folk, you're never going to go far wrong, because when you do, they're going to correct you. Too much politics in America, like in Europe, is conducted by beltway people in remote capitals. That's the root cause of the problem. And one of the reasons why I think Neshoba works is because there's an appetite for this authentic grassroots politics. And for those of your listeners who've never been to the Neshoba County Fair, and until today I was amongst them, think of Neshoba County Fair as it is to politics what Wimbledon is to tennis or Augusta is to golf. It is the creme de la creme. The top players are here, but they're talking common sense to ordinary folk, and it really works.
Yeah, and you're so right. We touched on that a moment ago with the governor, that you're up there on the stage, and you're just a few feet from the people that you represent.
And if they don't like what you say, they tell you.
Yeah, exactly. And you really don't have a choice. I mean, it's not like you can go hide and just stay hidden from your constituents, which is what they tend to. The other thing that bothers me, though, Douglas, is certainly at the federal level, the longer they're there, it seems like the more removed they become. They sort of build this kind of invisible fort around themselves, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, so many politicians, particularly at a national level, are egos in search of a purpose, and they're looking for constant validation and justification. You've got to ask yourself, why would you want a career in politics if it wasn't to achieve something specific? And I think that's the corruption of the American Republic, is because of the prevalence of career politicians.
Yeah.
People going into politics as an ends in itself rather than to fix something.
Well, it looks to me like that a lot of politicians struggle with the fact, or the notion, I should say, that, sometimes the best thing to do is nothing. They feel like they got to do something, and so that's rules, that's regulations, that's policies, that's restrictions, it's laws, it's statutes.
And it's why they hire people like Dr. Fauci, people who will tell them that they can fix the world. They can't fix the world. Most things that happen are a consequence of forces beyond our control, and the best we can do is adapt to them.
Right.
The conceit of politics is that we can control everything with enough data on a spreadsheet, and we've just seen for the past 18 months how we can't do that. We can't influence the trajectory of a virus by imposing mask mandates. It doesn't work. So I think
totally agree.
Those of us who believe in limited government really need to make this case. We can't have our lives governed by people who don't live amongst us.
Unbelievable. It is so counter to our founding and to what the vision was, which was to go off for a short period of time and do your duty and sacrifice. It's no longer that.
I think if George III was around today, he would feel right at home in Washington, D.C. He really would. He really would.
That's incredible.
That is a measure of the extent to which I think D.C. has lost touch with its Republican traditions.
All right, tell our audience exactly what MCPP does. You're a policy advocacy organization. Tell us what you guys do. How long have you been there, by the way, now?
I've been here for, as you can probably tell by my accent, I've only been here for 6 months.
Okay.
But we are Mississippi's free market think tank. We believe that it's the founding ideals hardwired into the American system by the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence that have made America the greatest republic ever.
All right.
And we think that by staying true to the principles of liberty and limited government and the free market, that is how we can ensure that America thrives and prospers. And it's not just good news for America that America sticks true to those founding principles. It's good for the world.
Yeah.
What we see at the moment is an attempt by political elites around the world to rein back liberty, to get rid of liberty, to reinvent what it means to have a constitution. And we are in the front line resisting that radical progressive agenda.
What are some of your priorities from a policy and legislative perspective here in Mississippi?
Number one, we want to see an end to the state income tax because we think more people should keep more of their own money and not hand it to politicians. Number two, we want school choice.
Okay.
Mississippi, most Mississippians in the public system don't have school choice, and I think they should. The United States is a country that can put a drone on the surface of Mars, but it can't teach kids in some districts in the Delta how to read and write properly.
Unbelievable.
That can only be fixed by making the system of public education properly accountable, and that means school choice.
Just read an article this morning that it looks like Holmes County School District is subject to being taken over by the Department of Education.
And about time, too, because Holmes County had a school superintendent who was earning $170,000 a year.
Nuts.
And it was F-rated, and yet the average per capita income of someone in Holmes County was less than $17,000. That's just wrong.
You know, how do we get the districts to institute more merit-based, performance-based pay, particularly at the superintendent level? And there's even some latitude in the classroom level as well. You know, some of the districts, of course, pay higher because of the way they supplement. The governor was just talking about that earlier. Is there an objection to that?
Well, in all jobs, if you do it well, you should get paid more. And I think that's the same with teaching. If you're a good teacher, you should be rewarded for being a good teacher.
Sure.
The problem is you have a pay scale that doesn't actually reflect and acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But the root cause of the problem is a lack of accountability, and the only way to fix the problem is to allow mums and dads to be able to shop around. If you went to Kroger's and they didn't give you what you wanted, you would go elsewhere. Why can't you do that when it comes to your kids' education?
Well, the education establishment, of course, has a strong hold on that and very staunchly object to that. What's the reason, do you think?
Well, fundamentally, it's vested interest.
Yeah.
People, if you have any group of people, whether they're lawyers or teachers or doctors, and they're not made accountable, they'll fix things in the interest of their profession.
Yeah.
What we've got to do is recognize that actually the people in charge of the education system should be the mums and dads whose kids are in it, not people who are paid to provide teaching.
All right, so I know you've actually written a couple of articles about this, and we've talked about it extensively on the program, and it's this permeation of critical race theory. Look, the left can say it's not really critical race theory. They can call it polka dot for all I care. All I know is you look at the materials, you look at the content, you look at the activities. It's scary how we're dividing at such a young age. This is destructive and harmful.
The United States should be celebrating the amount of progress that has been made in 2 generations in terms of good interracial relations.
Absolutely.
And Martin Luther King had a vision of a country where people were defined by the content of the character, not the color of their skin.
Yep.
We should be celebrating that we're incredibly close to achieving that. It's not perfect, but we're incredibly close to achieving that. Then along come a group of Marxists, that's what they are.
They are.
And they insist that people think of themselves primarily in racial terms. It's appalling. It's toxic. It divides Americans. It's also contrary to the founding idea. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson talked about people having inalienable rights. That is what defined America as a republic of individuals. What people who believe in critical race theory want to do is define Americans by their immutable characteristics. That is
physical,
toxic.
immutable characteristics.
Awful.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And it destroys the notion that we as individuals are the authors of our own future, are architects of our own destiny. It's a profoundly un-American idea.
I know you focus at the Center on Public Policy, but it's disturbing, is it not, Douglas, that America's great corporations, even our military, are adopting this nonsense. It's some of the stuff I've read from Raytheon and Lockheed and Coca-Cola and McDonald's. You just go down the list. There's not a single major corporation in this country that doesn't have some sort of effort underway, and they're paying billions of dollars to these consultants to do all this stuff.
I was one of those people who made a mistake about 10 years ago when I figured that a lot of these mad ideas that were on university campuses would stay there, because when people left university campuses and went out into the real world, they wouldn't take these ideas. How wrong we were. They've taken these ideas, and now HR departments in big corporations are now the primary vehicles for the imposition of these ideas across the American labour market, and it's terrifying. It's going to lead to a great deal of unhappiness. It's also profoundly anti-meritocratic, because it means that people today who achieve great things in the workplace are no longer seen as doing that on the basis of their own merits, but because they're ticking the quota box.
Yeah, it's terrible. Well, appreciate you coming on the program today, Douglas. Really,
it's been wonderful. Thank you so much, and next year.
Look forward to